where simple human connection existed quietly without ceremony, and where we had shared everything, from weekend jokes to personal worries about work, money, and life, without ever thinking anyone would see anything suspicious into neighbors simply talking across a narrow line of faded wooden boards. Mark was standing on his side of the yard near his small old shed, working on tightening a loose hinge while telling me about how his job had recently cut his hours. And as he spoke, there was a heaviness in his voice that made the moment feel real and vulnerable. And glancing repeatedly toward our yards as though the world around her existed through a filter of mistrust, where ordinary neighbors could easily become characters in some imagined plot. And before I could even move away from the fence, one of the officers entered my yard. Through the side gate, his voice calm yet authoritative as he explained that they had received a call reporting suspicious behavior involving two individuals speaking quietly through a fence, allegedly planning something while exchanging items and discussing schedules. Claims that sounded so absurd and surreal that for a moment I wondered whether this was some kind of misunderstanding or bizarre mistake of address. Because being questioned by authority, even when innocent, has a way of making you feel small, unsettled, and strangely exposed. When the officer finally mentioned that the call had come from a neighbor who believed we were planning something, my eyes naturally drifted toward the street. And there she stood, Karen, arms tightly crossed, expression rigid, chin slightly raised, watching with the unwavering certainty of someone absolutely convinced that they had acted responsibly. reinforcing the idea that in her mind suspicion equaled responsibility, as though caution demanded escalation rather than communication. And instead of acknowledging her mistake, she clung tightly to the narrative she had created, leaving no room for understanding or empathy toward the two ordinary people she had just dragged into an uncomfortable and unnecessary incident. As of some uninvited memory of flashing police lights now live permanently inside that space, reminding us that even our harmless routines could be misread through someone else's fearful imagination. I began to understand that the true damage caused by incidents like this does not lie in the temporary arrival of patrol cars or the questions asked by officers simply doing their job, but rather in the lingering fracture left afterward, the fracture in trust, the fracture in comfort, the fracture in the unspoken sense of safety that makes a neighborhood feel like a shared space instead of a collection of suspicious strangers watching each other from behind blinds and porch railings. One afternoon, about a week later, I saw Karen again as she stood in front of her house watering her plants with stiff, mechanical movements, and for a brief moment our eyes met in the open air between us, creating a fragile pause in time, where an apology might have existed, where acknowledgement or even a single respectful nod could have softened the invisible distance she had created. Yet instead she turned away with a cold, dismissive shift of her shoulders, choosing silence over accountability, reinforcing the invisible wall she had already built, far stronger than the wooden fences surrounding our yards.